Good afternoon. Today we are going to look at present real conditionals. Before we start, let's talk about what conditionals are. Conditionals are basically if statements that propose a condition and a result for that condition. They have an if clause, for example, if I go to work, and a main clause, for example, I drive a car. The if clause is the condition and the main clause is the result of that condition. If I go to work, I drive a car. Now let's look at the uses and the form. Present real conditionals are used for general facts, habits, and with imperatives for instructions, commands, and invitations. For example, for facts, if you heat water to 100 degrees Celsius, it boils. For habits, if it is Saturday morning, I watch TV. And for instructions, commands, and invitations, if you feel sick, stay home. Now let's look at general truths. Present real conditionals are used for general facts, that is, results that are always true for the condition. For example, if you heat water to 100 degrees Celsius, it boils. Here, the if clause presents a real condition, if you heat water to 100 degrees Celsius, and the main clause presents a real result, it boils. Now let's look at the form. The verb in the if clause is in the simple present, that is, heat, and the verb in the main clause is also in the simple present, boils. Now let's look at present habits. The present real conditional can also be used for habits that result from a condition. For example, if a dog is happy, it wags its tail. The if clause states a real condition. If a dog is happy, the main clause states the habit. It wags its tail. Now let's look at the form. The verb in the if clause can be in the simple present or the present progressive. Here, is in the simple present. The verb in the main clause has to be in the simple present. Here, wags. Let's look at another example. If I am driving to work, I listen to the radio. Here, the if clause states a real condition. If I am driving to work. The main clause states the habit. I listen to the radio. Now let's look at the form. The verb in the if clause can be in the simple present or the present progressive. Here, I am driving to work is using the present progressive. The main clause verb has to be in the simple present. That is, listen. Now let's look at present real conditionals for instructions, commands, and invitations. Present real conditionals can be used to give instructions, commands, and invitations. For example, if you like scary movies, call me. Here, the if clause states a real condition. If you like scary movies. The main clause is an invitation. Call me. Now let's look at the form. The verb in the if clause is in the simple present or present progressive. Here, if you like scary movies, uses the simple present, like. In the main clause, use the imperative, that is, the subject is omitted. Let's look at another example. If you are feeling sick, stay home. The if clause states a real condition, if you are feeling sick. The main clause is a command, stay home. Let's look at the form. The verb in the if clause can be either in the simple present or the present progressive. Here, if you are feeling sick is using the present progressive. Remember that the main clause uses an imperative. That is, the subject is omitted. Let's look at another example. If there is an earthquake, get under a table. Here, the if clause states a real condition. If there is an earthquake. The main clause is an instruction. Get under a table. Now let's look at the form. Once again, the verb in the if clause can either be the simple present or the present progressive. Here, if there is an earthquake, uses the simple present. Next, remember that the main clause uses the imperative, that is, the subject is omitted. Now let's do a quick summary of the uses and the form. So, for general facts, the if clause will be in the simple present. For example, if the temperature is -1°C. For the main clause, in the simple present. For example, water freezes. So, general facts, if the temperature is -1°C, water freezes. For habits, the if clause can be either in the simple present, such as if I drive to work, or the present progressive, such as if I am driving to work. The main clause will use the simple present. For example, I listen to the radio. So for habits, if I drive to work or if I am driving to work, I listen to the radio. For commands, instructions, and invitations, the if clause will utilize the simple present. For example, if you feel sick, or the present progressive, if you are feeling sick. The main clause will use an imperative, that is, the subject is omitted. For example, stay home. So for commands, instructions, and invitations, an example, if you feel sick or if you are feeling sick, stay home. Now let's look at present real conditionals with modals. Present real conditionals can be used with modals. There are many different kinds of modals. We have modals of obligation, suggestion, possibility, ability, permission and offers, prohibition, necessity, and request. Let's look at some examples. First example, if you take the bus, you may save money. Once again, the if clause states a real condition. If you take the bus, the main clause states a possible result. You may save money. Now let's look at the form. The verb in the if clause is in the simple present or the present progressive. Here, if you take the bus, uses the simple present. In the main clause, we have a modal of possibility, may. May is a modal of possibility. Let's look at another example. If you are feeling sick, you had better stay home. Once again, the if clause states a real condition, if you are feeling sick. And the main clause makes a suggestion, you had better stay home. Now let's look at the form. The verb in the if clause can either be in the simple present or the present progressive. Here, if you are feeling sick, uses the present progressive. In the main clause, there is a modal of advice, had better. Had better is a modal of advice. Now let's look at another example. If you feel hungry and dizzy, you have got to eat. Here, the if clause states a real condition, if you feel hungry and dizzy. And the main clause expresses a necessity, you have got to eat. Now let's look at the form. Once again, the verb in the if clause can be either in the simple present or present progressive. Here, if you feel hungry and dizzy is in the simple present. And in the main clause, there is a modal of necessity, have got to. Have got to is a modal of necessity. Now let's look at another example. If you're driving, you must wear a seatbelt. Here, the if clause states a real condition, if you're driving, and the main clause expresses an obligation, you must wear a seatbelt. Now let's look at the form. The verb in the if clause is in the simple present or present progressive. Here, you're driving uses the present progressive. And in the main clause, there is a modal of obligation, that is must. Now let's look at other conditional phrases. The other conditional phrases are when, whenever, even if, only if. When means the same as if. Whenever means every time. Even if is used for conditions with no effect on the result, and only if is used for conditions that have a specific result. Now let's look at when. Once again, when can be used in the if clause. For example, you save the earth when you take a bus. When you take a bus means the same as if you take a bus. Now let's look at whenever. Whenever can also be used in the if clause. For example, you save the earth whenever you take a bus. Whenever you take a bus means the same as every time you take a bus. Now let's look at even if. We use even if in the if clause for results that will not change. That is, the condition may be fulfilled, but the result will not change. For example, I go for a walk, even if it rains. Even if it rains means the same as it may rain, but I will still go for a walk. Now, let's look at only if. We use only if in the if clause to emphasize a possibility that results from a specific condition. For example, no matter what, I must go out. Even if it rains, I must go out. Even if it snows, I must go out. But I must stay home only if there is hail. Here, only if means that if there is hail, I will stay home, but for any other condition, I will go out. Now let's talk about placement and commas. The if clause may come before or after the main clause, but if the if clause comes before, then it must be followed by a comma. For example, before, if you feel hungry and tired, if clause, comma, you have to eat something, main clause. Now let's look at after. You have to eat something, main clause, no comma, if you feel hungry and tired, if clause. Now let's look at then. To emphasize results, we can start the main clause with then. However, the if clause must come first. For example, if you take the bus, if clause, then you can save money, main clause. Now let's do some practice questions. Please take 10 seconds to choose which words fit in the blank. If you're watching a movie, be quiet. It's the rules. Here, we use the imperative for commands. It's regarding the rules, not a habit. Next. If we're studying, we listen to music. We use the simple present in the main clause for habits. Also, a comma is necessary when the if clause comes first. Next. I swim every day, even if it is freezing. I always go swimming. Here, we use even if because the conditions don't affect the result. Next. If you're driving, you mustn't talk on the phone. It is against the law when driving. Here we're talking about laws, so we use mustn't because it is a modal of prohibition. Next. He uses too much olive oil when he cooks. Remember that the simple present is used in the main clause for habits. Also, a comma is not necessary when the if clause comes last. Next, my dog is scared whenever there is thunder. Every time lightning strikes, he hides in his bed. We use whenever because it's used for every time the condition occurs. Now let's do a quick summary. We use present real conditionals for facts, habits, and with imperatives for instructions, commands, and invitations. For example, for facts, if you heat water to 100 degrees Celsius, it boils. For habits, if I am driving to work, I listen to the radio. And with imperatives, if you feel sick, stay home. Present real conditionals can also be used with modals. For example, if you're sick, you must rest. The if clause may come before or after the main clause, but if it comes before, it must have a comma. For example, if you feel sick, comma, stay home. Or it may come after. For example, stay home, no comma, if you feel sick. When the if clause comes first, then we can use then in the main clause to emphasize results. For example, if you heat water to 100 degrees Celsius, then it boils. Well, that concludes my presentation. If you have any thoughts, questions, or concerns, please email me. And thank you so much for watching, and please have a wonderful rest of your day.